crowd. Can you feel that energy of self-advocacy? Yeah. Sorry for getting it started late, but we'll try to get this. We're going to have a lot of fun these 2 days. Hello, my name is Tony Chavez. Your attendance alone inspires me to give it my all. Thank you for attending the Summit on Social Equality entitled Inclusion versus Containment. We began planning sessions 5 to 6 months prior to this summit. The obstacles we identified tied to containment issues, and we are hoping we all learn from each other continuously, including each other. At times we contain our own selves. At the most part, society perceives us wrong. They perceive us as those people. But we must educate the public eye as we are not so different. Just because we accomplish things in our own life different, everyone is limited in some aspect. In time, there's times inclusion starts with us. We should include those that don't quite understand. By the community that does not understand, they don't include us and contain our limits. Before I continue, I would like to include you. We would love your input and questions and comments. Please ask questions after the presenter is finished. Thank you. Also, would love to appreciate your hard work and even your attendance. Can you feel that positive energy of self-advocacy?
Yeah.
Let's give ourselves a round of applause. We want everyone to think outside the box. Any and all ideas are valued. We want you to feel comfortable so that there are no wrong questions. We want you to feel like the limits are off. Inclusion is one of our freedoms and rights, so we also should include one another. Any form of containment infringes our rights. We will also talk about assistive technology and how that makes a huge difference when it comes to limitations in this dynamic session. We will talk about bullying and how that affects a very bad perception and excludes us. We will have breakout sessions. We will have 2 breaks today, 2 breaks tomorrow. Real quick, some housekeeping rules. If anyone needs a restroom, please go ahead and exit go to the hall, go towards the Arizona room, and take a left. There's the restrooms. Again, we're going to have breakout sessions. And a dance today, hosted by DJ Danny Luna from Belen. We will continue tomorrow talking about the disability movement and how important and valuable that is in our community. Going on to people with intellectual disabilities and what type of obstacles they have gone through. We will discuss the importance of the SSI importance and how poverty contains all of us. Also, an update on the New Mexico statewide chapter of People First and the importance of its existence. And we will close, hopefully, with great perceptions and a diverse mentality, as well as action steps for your community. Now, our next presenter has a dynamic presentation. Please hold questions till after he is finished. Thank you. He is a 2003 graduate of New Mexico State University, bachelor's degree in social work. And I didn't bring the bio, I told you that already. Hold on. He is a 2003 graduate of New Mexico State University with a bachelor's degree in social work. He resides in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Throughout his career, he has worked in fields in independent living, New Mexico State University, the correctional system, as well as grassroots organizing. He is currently serving his last term on the Governor's Commission on Disability and is currently serving on the City of Las Cruces Americans with Disability Advisory Board. He is the sole proprietor sole proprietor of Joyful Expressions, his motivational speaking venture, when he hopes to do more of in the coming years. Please help me welcome Cory Valencia.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. That was awesome. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Everybody hear me? All right. As Mr. Chavez said, my name is Cory Valencia. First, I would like to thank the ARC of New Mexico and the Summit on Equality Planning Committee for inviting me to speak here today. I enjoy when I have the opportunity to speak in front of people in hopes that what I say will inspire them to live a more full and limitless life. So again, I thank you. This is me at 3 years old. Now I know what y'all are thinking. Wow, what a cute baby. What happened? To put this in context, I would like to begin with a question. How many of you are familiar with what an APGAR score is? Show of hands. APGAR, what an APGAR score is. Okay. Well, for those of you that don't know, an APGAR score is the acronym for a test used to determine the health of a child at birth. The acronym stands for A, which means activity. Is the baby moving or is the baby crying? P for pulse. Does the baby have a pulse? G for grimace or reflex irritability, meaning that, or basically, how does the baby respond to pain and stimuli? If it gets pinched, does it cry? Does it grimace? The muscles tense, things like that. Appearance, which is color or alertness. Is the baby pink? Is the baby blue? If it's blue, not good. And respiration, is the baby breathing? Now the test is given on a 0 to 10 scale with 2 points for each category. Most healthy babies score an 8 or 9 at birth, and then 5 minutes later, they're tested again, and they either stay at that level or they're a 10, 5 minutes later. The test is not used to determine the long-term health of a baby. What it is used for is to determine how they first handled the birthing process, number one. Secondly, it is used to show how a baby is adapting to the environment around them. When I was born, my score was a 2. 5 minutes later, it was a 4. When I was born, and even 5 minutes later, there were categories I didn't score in, which means I was not breathing. I was not breathing. Either I wasn't breathing, or I wasn't moving, or I wasn't crying, or I didn't respond to stimuli. So I was in bad shape. This meant, the doctors told my parents that I would not live through the day, let alone almost 30 years later. They told my parents that if I did live, I would have severe physical and cognitive disabilities. Now, we all have challenges we face as humans, whether we have a disability, or whether we were born with a disability, acquired it, or have no diagnosed disability whatsoever. Throughout much of my life, I have faced adversity of a physical nature, as well as a psychological and spiritual nature. I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, on September 26, 1981, at Tripler Army Medical Center. As I mentioned at the outset, my birth did not come with the greatest of circumstances. However, with the love and support of my family and friends I've met along the way, I have been able to experience things that I don't think I would have experienced otherwise. And because of these experiences, been overcome the initial label of a less than favorable diagnosis of spina bifida. This is what brings me to you today, to talk about the common challenges we all face as humans, and how, if we have the right perspective, we can take those challenges and use them as a catalyst to live beyond the labels of a diagnosis or labels that others have put on us, even the labels that we put on ourselves, and build a more equal world for all human beings. Friedrich Nietzsche says, "What doesn't kill us only makes us stronger." What I feel Nietzsche is trying to tell us here is that no matter how bad a certain situation is, if you look at it a certain way, the challenges we face are always meant to make us learn and grow. Most times, though, it is easier to sit back and let adversity defeat us. To give you an example of this, due to having spinal bifida, I've had 13 surgeries by the time I was 17 and a senior in high school. Now, most people will look at these circumstances and say, I can't do this. It's too much. However, as Joel Osteen says, every setback is actually a setup for a greater comeback. Which means that every challenge you feel is an impediment to your goal can and actually is helping you to achieve your dreams. See, what I've come to believe is that we are more than our physical bodies. We are more than our disabilities if we just allow ourselves to tap into our greater potential. We can break the bonds of the label of disability. Now, when talking about why we're here, which is the issue of equality, I feel the greatest impediment to that goal is labeling and the use of language. As a society, we feel the need to label and categorize people into easily identifiable groups. The place this is beautifully illustrated, and clap if you agree with me, is high school. You have the jocks on one side of the school, the nerds on the other side, popular kids, and so on. What I want to know is, who came up with these labels? In high school, I never really bought into these social labels. I had friends in all the groups, though I never really identified with any of them. The same went for my disability. Let me tell you a story. When I was 4, my mom took me to a doctor's appointment. We lived in Virginia, where we lived in Virginia. As I'm there playing, in the doctor's office, they have stuff to play with. As I'm there playing, there's another woman in the waiting area. She's looking at me. So she turns to my mom. She asks, "What's wrong with him?" Almost immediately, I turn and say, "Nothing's wrong. I'm just here for a checkup." In telling you the story, I've answered my own question. We come up with these labels because we want to make sense of the world. To make sense of the things and people that are different and foreign to us. The problem with this method, though, is that as a people, we begin to have preconceived notions not only about the person we've originally labeled as different or wrong, but also any other person that displays similar characteristics. Also, if we're the ones being labeled, and if the label is enforced long enough, we begin to identify with the label more than we should. As I said, when I was young, I didn't really think anything was different about me. I guess it was because I was always supported by my family in trying new things and participating in sports, such as track or wheelchair racing, karate, even roller skating. And let me tell you, that's hard. I feel bad for those of you that actually walk and actually have to roller skate, because that's hard, even on a walker. I was always around a community of other kids that were like me, or at least in similar circumstances to me. However, as I'm getting older, I'm realizing there were labels and beliefs that I held about myself and my disability that were unconscious, that I didn't know about. Now, what made these beliefs come to the surface was how others were treating me. Whereas when I was younger, I viewed myself as the same as everybody else. When I got older and people viewed me as different, or viewed me differently, I began to shut down my abilities. And not only focus on the negative, but begin to live out that negative persona. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about when I say I was living out the negative labels and beliefs. In 2009, I traveled to San Diego for my high school reunion. My 10-year high school reunion. And as I'm sitting there in the ballroom, I'm sitting there with a friend of mine, and we're watching people come in, and I'm recognizing faces and names and people, and he's not. But these are people we both hung out with. So I turned to him and I asked him, why aren't you recognizing people? And he says to me, he turns to me, he says to me, you were always more popular than I was. I was flabbergasted. This was a concept that was so foreign to me because I for so long believed that I was less than because I couldn't do the things the way others could, or I didn't believe the way others did, or I didn't have value because it was hard for me to get hired because at this time I was out of work or I was between jobs. And it was hard to get hired. I had forgotten that I'm pretty much a person, anyone who really knows me, I'm pretty much a person who's going to introduce themselves to anybody who will pretty much listen to me. But I think the biggest belief that I've had to overcome recently is being able to trust not only myself and trust myself and my body, both physically and spiritually. To believe that I can have a healthy body and that I was actually meant to come in the package that you see before you today was another foreign concept. For me, the belief that I was somehow wrong or different was reinforced through religion. My own beliefs didn't tell me that I was different or somehow wrong for being born the way I was. Other people's religious beliefs told me that. Now, let me give you another story about when I was born. When I was born, my parents, understandably, were fearful of what was going to happen to me. So my mom went to the chaplain there at the hospital, at the Army Center. When she asked why this happened, the man told her, "You are a sinner, he is a sinner, and this is your punishment." Now I'm going to repeat that and let that sink in for everybody. You are a sinner, he is a sinner, and this is your punishment. Now, do you ever wonder why babies always look so surprised when they have their eyes wide open, or when they laugh, or when they cry? It always seems a little bit louder than anything else in the room. My belief is that's because they're experiencing life on a wholly conscious level, both physically and energetically, so that everything that happens to them, every word, every touch, becomes stored in their mind to be remembered at a later date. Sometimes these memories are easy to access. Usually, these are the good ones. But sometimes, other times, it requires a trigger to suddenly unlock the memories. For me, every time my beliefs or ideas were questioned about the world around me, or I was told to be wrong, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think my mind would go back to that memory, that cell memory, that energetic memory of being called a punishment to my parents. Now, even though I didn't experience this incident firsthand, and my mother did, I still believe I felt the energy of it because of what it must have felt like for my parents, for my mother. In fact, because of it, on some deep level, I felt like I was a punishment and a burden, to my mother especially. But the thing is, here's the thing. If my mother hadn't sacrificed a paying job or a career, then I wouldn't be able to come up here and speak to you today, if ever. Now, if you ask me now if I was angry, not only at that original priest, but at all those other people who have discounted me since then, I would say no. Because if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't have gotten to this issue for myself and moved past it to learn to trust not only my body, not only my physical body, but my spiritual body, and let myself live to my full potential. See, anger is a strong emotion, and in some ways it can propel us to achieve things we never thought possible. Excuse me. Staying angry, however, whether it is at ourselves or other people, will hinder our long-term growth because whenever we meet people, the anger will cause us to mistrust those that have the best of intentions for us. Now, as we get farther into the subject of labels, it is important to look at the relationship between labels and language. Sorry. The joys of modern technology. There we go. You may think that labels and language are the same, but they're not. Language is usually used to describe things, to make sense of them. So, if we follow that logic, that language is used to describe things, then labels are the end result of the use of language. The meaning, or perceived meaning, behind the words, if you will. Now, to understand this idea fully, let us look at some words that societies use to describe people with disabilities. In some cases, these are words that we've even used to describe ourselves. First, let's look at the word retarded. Now, the definition of the word retarded, according to the dictionary, is actually quite simple. It's a simple delay or slowing of progress. Now, let's look at what it's meant to the people with disabilities. To this community, it has meant being stupid, dumb, or less than. Now let's move on to one that for a long time was the accepted term, handicapped. Now I've read multiple origins for this word. Another question, how many of you are familiar with the term as it relates to the game of golf? Okay? For those of you that aren't, it means that a person with a higher handicap can subtract more strokes from his or her score to compete against better players, thereby leveling the playing field. That doesn't sound like a bad thing, right? Levels the playing field, makes the game a little bit more even. I've also read that the origin dates back to a lottery game in England in the 1700s called hand and cap, where a person reaches into a cap and can win a prize, usually money. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had the opportunity to reach my hand into a cap, get a slip of paper, and you win some money or win a prize, I'd probably take it. That's how we created gambling, people. Now, whatever the true origin of the word, when applied to people with disabilities, it suddenly took on the meaning and the image of a disabled beggar, or as a way to categorize and eventually to mean anyone with a physical disability, physical, mental, or cognitive disability. My point is that words by themselves are just that, words. They become labels and therefore have power when they are used to describe an entire population of people. To combat this power, the disability community adopted the concept of person-first language. The idea here is that instead of saying disabled person, we say person with a disability. While this has done wonders in leveling the playing field, at least beginning to level the playing field for people with disabilities, personally, I feel it doesn't go far enough to distinguish between a person and their mental or physical circumstances. So, here's some language that I've learned to use to me better emphasizes the importance of the person. Let me get this. And this next group of ideas I'm calling my new paradigm of disabilities. I am a person living with the challenge of spina bifida. What this language does, that I feel that person-first language doesn't do, is that it puts the focus squarely on the person while putting the disability in the form of another one of life's challenges. To me, person-first language, while entirely valid, still feels like I'm overly identifying with my disability. With this new language, the disability, as I said, is just another one of life's challenges, like not having enough money to pay for that certain thing you want, or learning a new skill. It evens the playing field because we all have challenges we face every day. They don't always look the same, but at the end of the day, how they affect our lives and how we end up dealing with them are a lot more similar than we think. But like person-first language, though, and similarly to person-first language, this is only meant as a description to those we may meet and those we may work with. So this is how we describe ourselves to the outside world, in other words. However, what is the internal message we want to give ourselves? Because here, see, the idea of having a challenge is still thought of to be a negative, that it hinders our experience, when in fact, every challenge we face is an opportunity for personal growth. So let's take this idea and go a bit further. Again, I'll use my own circumstances as an example. And I'm calling this idea opportunity-based thought, and you'll see why. I am a person living with the challenges sine bifida, and through this challenge, I am gifted with the opportunity to learn, grow, and prosper into the person I am meant to be. Now, the important difference here is that I envision this as the belief behind the spoken message. Now, the part I really want to focus on is the words, I am gifted with the opportunity to learn, grow, and prosper into the person I am meant to be. See, instead of viewing our disabilities as something that needs to be overcome, as if we were in competition with it, we recognize it for what it is. That is an opportunity for us to learn and grow and see exactly what the full potential of our capabilities are. You know, people say that the greatest triumph is the triumph of the human spirit. Well, if that's true, then each of us in this room has that opportunity every day to live that triumph. We just have to shift our mindset from the idea that our disabilities are an obstacle and believe that it's an opportunity to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And that by us being the best versions of ourselves that we can be, that it will spread to others until it envelops humanity, until it envelops all of humanity to be the best that it can be. Now, to close, I'd like to share a clip from the movie The Empire Strikes Back. I hope this clip teaches you two things. Number one, I'm a geek. I'm a super geek. And for those of you paying attention, yes, that's a label. But it's one I gladly wear. There you go. Number two, what I hope it teaches you, I hope it reinforces the idea that we are not only more than our physical beings, but more than our individual circumstances, such as disability, race, religion, or social status, and that no matter what kind of labels others want to put on us, the only ones who could derail us from who we're meant to be is us. Thank you.